to try not to use the mic. If you can't hear me, please let me know, and I will pick the mic back up. So what I want to talk about today is AI automation and the future of the workforce. I will be very transparent to tell you that my understanding of how AI works behind the scenes of the tools that I use is very nominal. And that's not what we're going to discuss. I don't want to get into the technologies and how they work, because honestly, I don't care. I care about how this is going to affect us in the workforce and what the future of work is going to be. And that's what we're going to cover today. So one of the things I want to start off with is why corporations exist. We're going to talk about the power of AI in the workforce, then dig into a little bit about the future of work, and then talk about how I believe you can prepare for the future and the changes that we're going to see. Things that we are not going to cover today, and I wanted to put this slide in because these are the questions I get a lot when we talk about this. We talk about universal basic income, we can talk about government policies, we can talk about the right and wrong uses of AI, and I've got some examples of that in the presentation, and if you should use AI to cheat in your classes and or expand your schoolwork. We're not going to get into that topic. I am pro that topic. So I don't know how that's going to go on this campus, especially since I also teach here. So part of this conversation is going to get dark. Every single person that I have this conversation with is like, man, this is intense. I don't think the future is going to be like that. We are better humans. And I don't believe that is the case. A lot of what I'm going to present today is going to be relatively doom and gloom, because we as a society have seen historically how corporations act when they can automate the workforce and get rid of workers. We are seeing the same thing right now with layoffs as companies are trying to make their bottom line a little bit better. I don't think that is going to change in the future. I effectively think it is going to get very worse. So, quick bit about me and why I care about this topic. So, little bits, Laura mentioned I've been in this community for a while. A lot of my work has been in engineering. I started off my career as an engineer, found out I didn't like sitting in a cubicle and writing code all day. That was super boring. I like talking and working with people. My fascination is around people, how they interact, the things that they do, so I quickly shifted my work into product management. I have done product management at the local level here within this community. I have done product management in the United States. I have done product management all over the globe. Some pictures that have afforded me some really cool things in my life. One is being able to go have Domino's in the middle of a banana field in India, to spend some time in London visiting some castles. But also one time when I was in Europe, I got to go to a strongman event and meet Eddie Hall, which was super awesome, all provided to me by the work that I have done with various corporations. So as we go through this doom and gloom, I don't want you to think that the corporations and the places I have worked are bad. They are inherently trying to do good things in the world, but the problem is they are corporations and they are here for a purpose, and we'll talk about that. So what I am doing today, I am a lecturer at Siebel Center for Design. I am teaching Introduction to Design Thinking, and I have also written a book that touches on this topic, not so much doom and gloom around AI. I'm working on a second book, which is part of the conversation today that I'm going to get into around this topic and what I think the changes of the workforce are going to be and what changes we need to see as employees so that we can continue to maintain employment for as long as we possibly can. So the purpose of the work that I do, my hope is to empower individuals to succeed and do more in their careers, their communities, and things around them. I struggled early on in my career trying to get to the places that I wanted to do, to have the promotions that I wanted to get. It was very frustrating. My hope is that through all of the learnings I have, that I can share those with you, that your life is less frustrating so that, again, you can do more for your families, your community, and beyond. So let's talk about why corporations exist. They exist for a multitude of reasons. First one is risk management. So any of you are in a startup here and you have an LLC, you started that LLC for a reason, to protect your assets or protect the people in the company. Same things can be said for corporations. They offer goods and services, so all companies exist to offer a thing. They offer a product. Dasani or Coca-Cola, whoever owns Dasani, offers these things. Someone makes the bottles and sells it to them. Someone has this. They exist to have products and services. There's a wide variety of products and services that exist, so imagine anything that you spend money on, that is a product and a service. They're also there for social responsibility and sustainability. We have a lot of companies that are doing a lot of great things in the world to help advance our planet, and I've got some examples of that here in a minute. But there's really a number one reason on why companies exist, and that is very simply to make money. There is no other reason that corporations exist other than to make money. Businesses exist for the sole reason to make money. I want to make that clear because that's going to connect to a lot of the stuff I talk about in the presentation. And as I talk about that, as I mentioned, there's social sustainability or social responsibility and sustainability that companies are doing. Tesla is doing a lot for accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. They cannot do that without money. Same thing can be said for Patagonia. They are doing a lot in this world. They are doing a great job of treating their employees well. They are helping fight for environmentalism and justice. They cannot do that without money. Same thing can be said for Tom's. Same thing can be said for Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's has to sell ice cream so that they can support the activism tab on their homepage. They can't be activists without money to support the stuff that they're doing. So the corporations exist, again, simply to make money. To show this then, to get into this topic a little bit deeper, there's been a lot of talk within AI about increased productivity. We're going to talk about how that's going to play out here, but we have seen increased productivity. We talk about corporations exist to make money. You look at increased productivity that started around the 1980s, and you also notice probably a little bit before that, let's say late 1970s, there's been a real stagnation in corporate wages or hourly compensation for employees. Productivity has almost doubled in comparison to the hourly compensation for employees. They have not really changed on average since the mid-1970s. So we are making just as much as we did back in the day in comparison to the productivity increases that we have seen. As we talk about that then, there are other areas in which corporations have continued to put money. CEO pay raises, or CEO salaries have increased by 1,400%. There is money to be had in these corporations. So it's not that companies aren't trying to not spend money on the hourly wages, they are putting it in other places. So within that, we as employees are very simply a number. I don't say that to be very negative, but that's a concept that we need to have in mind. Because as you looked at all of the layoffs that Facebook, that Google did, that all of these companies that were laying off tens of thousands of people, they did it to pad the bottom line so the company can continue to exist. Because the company cannot continue to exist without money. So if there are economic downturns and things that are struggling for that company to exist, they are going to get rid of people to make the numbers look better so that stock prices and everything increase. If we do not keep this in mind, then the rest of my presentation makes no sense. So as I say that, it's very dark. I told you part of this presentation is going to be relatively doom and gloom. I don't mean that you are a number, we are all people. The book that I wrote talks about empathy as the number one thing to use in corporations to not only, one, make it a better place to work, but also to get better productivity and outcomes for companies. I do not look at people I work with as a special number. Likely you don't either. But as far as the corporation that has in mind, employees are one of the most expensive things on the book. If you don't understand that, then you're not going to see the connection that I'm going to make here in the future about AI. If they can automate your $75,000 a year job, they will. That is a cold, hard fact. If they can automate your job, they will. So like I said, very much doom and gloom. We look at this and we talk about different surveys and conversations that we're having. I have some real world examples of this here in the future, or in the later in the presentation. But by the end of 2023, 33% of business leaders definitely say that they are going to lay people off due to ChatGPT. At the bottom here, it says within 5 years, 63% of business leaders say ChatGPT will definitely, 32%, or probably lead to workers' layoffs. That's almost a little bit over 60% there of people being laid off. I believe that number is highly inaccurate. I believe it will happen sooner than 5 years. So this is what I expected as I was putting this presentation together that you all would look like right now as I go through all of that doom and gloom. It's relatively accurate. So let's go through a scenario. Talk about why this matters and talk about why the number of this conversation matters. So how many in here know David Blaine? Does everyone remember who David Blaine is? So when I was a kid, David Blaine would have these TV specials. I don't remember if they were on like Thursday night or Friday night, and he would do this thing in the TV special where he would do magic in your home. So David Blaine would put up this thing on the screen, and he would say, I want you to start at the X, and then I want you to do X number of moves, X number of moves, X number of moves. It was really just a mathematic equation that he put together to where he could guess the outcome of most of the kids at home. And so I, as a little kid, I still don't understand exactly what he did, going in and doing this, I would get excited because he would pick the spot that I was on, and then I would go to school and I would tell my friends and we would get excited. So because this was such a pivotal portion of my childhood, I wanted to run something very similar to that. So imagine that we met one-on-one. We met before I got up and gave this talk today. and I said to you, good to meet you, tell me about yourself. I want you to think about what it is that you would say, how you would answer that question. If I were to say, hey, tell me about yourself, think about how you would answer that question. Have a David Blaine moment here, hopefully. What would you say? My guess is it's going to look something very similar to this. Hi, my name is, and I'm a something, or I work for a particular company, or I do X. I gave this presentation to students a little while ago, and I replaced job title with major. Every single one of them raised their hands. How many people here did I get very close to on this level of topic? See some heads nodding? It's probably close to where the conversation would go. Again, there's a slight bias because we're at a career event. There's good opportunity that that's how the conversation would go. So why does this matter? So the true meaning of work is more than just the productivity and doing the things that we do every day. It gives people a sense of security, connection to peers. A majority of my really close friends are people that I have worked with in the past. As my one neighbor knows here, I spend all of my time in my house, and he probably never sees me. I don't get out much, but I am very close to the people I work with. So it also gives that sense of accomplishment, sense of self-worth, and when those things go away, it's a very negative issue. So we had this happen during COVID where we saw, I think it was 15% unemployment rate. And so within this, we see a 25% increase in prevalence of anxiety and depression worldwide. So the current speculation is that AI will replace roughly 40% of jobs. And I don't mean replace and then new jobs come up. I mean replace and those jobs go away and 40% of people don't have jobs anymore. It's different than what we saw in the Industrial Revolution. And I'll talk about that here in a second. One of the other issues, and the reason that I talk about this, is because we need to prepare as a society to understand the changes that are going to happen. Because not only one, does it cause depression and things that we saw here, but there's also an increase in other issues where we see domestic violence, especially in male-female households. That tends to be a very big issue when unemployment happens. Whether it's one person that gets unemployed in the house, the male gets unemployed, or both get unemployed, stress levels rise, things rise, violence increases inside the home. So as again, we're talking about a lot of doom and gloom here, but as we get through the conversation, what I want to share with you is this was in the email that a lot of you received, which I used ChatGPT to help me write, but discover some strategies for helping to navigate this in the corporate world and help increase the success we can have not only as employees, but how we can help do a better job around us. Again, we're not going to talk about UBI, we're not going to talk about government policies because that's way beyond the scope of a 30-minute presentation or 40-minute presentation that I will be able to give. I want you to walk away with an idea of what success looks like and how this can lead to change in the places that you work, but also in the community around you. Because this change is going to affect a lot of people in the very near future, and it is going to happen around the world, but also in this community. Like there is a likelihood that people in this community will lose their jobs, either jobs that they have here locally or jobs that they have across the world for companies they work remotely with, due to automation or changes within the company towards automation and AI. You need to be there to help them. The reason I want to talk about this is so that we can change the minds and get people to understand that I could be half wrong, I could be 75% wrong, I could be a quarter wrong about what the future is going to look like. Maybe it's not 40% of jobs, maybe it's not 20% of jobs, maybe it's 15% of the jobs. But think back to the world when 15% of the jobs were lost during COVID and how the effects those had on not only our community, but our in-home self and mental health on the things that happened with just 15%. If we see anywhere near that again for sustained periods of time, we are going to go through very similar issues that we had during the COVID pandemic. And as I see this, like, hey, Brandon, but I'm a student, I'm a nobody. It doesn't matter, you're a leader. You can be a leader if you choose to be a leader. So the definition that I have for a leader, actually, I'll put this up here. What is a leader? Does anyone want to take a stab at the definition? If anyone who's seen me talk before, please don't ruin it. Anybody have a stab at what the definition of a leader is? Anybody want to take a guess? Nobody? Nobody's got a guess?
Somebody who takes responsibility and is an innovator.
Okay.
Somebody willing to influence somebody else to do something.
Okay. I would say that's closer to the definition of leadership. Sorry, I'll stay here.
No, I'll get it.
Close to the definition of leadership, but there, anybody else? Mhm.
always the last to jump.
Okay.
He or she is
Yeah.
always the last to jump. And I feel like that's like my opinion of a leader.
Okay. Do you have one?
Yeah, I'll just say, I've applied it in a small firm and coaching youth soccer.
Mhm.
And it's kind of a coach and setting your tone and putting the pieces in place that allow the team to succeed.
Okay. So I would generally put most of those underneath leadership, and those things are what you view in a leader. So the definition of a leader for me is someone who has followers, very simply, right? So I say this because you choose who you want to follow. The definition you gave may be people that you like to follow. The definition you gave may be people that you like to follow, but those things don't apply the same for me. And the easiest way to help understand that statement is to ask the question of the two people on the screen, former president or current president, which one of them is a leader? You have 4 possible answers to this question. You have current, you have former, you have neither, you have both. Because how you view the people on the screen is who you decide to lead. And so it's on you to take you as an individual, because all of us are unique. Even if you have a twin, triplets, quadruplets, whatever, you are unique. None of those other people have had the same life as you. So you have a way in your mind to solve challenges that no one else has. And so if you step up and want to lead the charge on what's going to happen in the future, people will very likely follow, because they're going to be looking for that type of leader to help make the change and help avoid some of the struggles that we're going to see. With this then again, the title doesn't make you, both of them had titles of presidents, and there's only one of them on the screen that I have respected. So let's talk about the power of AI in the workplace. So my topic here is primarily about AI when it comes to software. Things like ChatGPT, the large language models, the different things that we have around that. Machinery has been around for a while. We've been making cars with machines for many years. I'm not interested in that topic because it's very relatively closed in comparison to what we're going to see with this AI software revolution. So as we dig into this, I want to think about from the perspective of how can AI help me in whatever my job title is, and I've got some examples of this. To help understand the popularity of the tool ChatGPT, this is a graph that I found that shows how different companies got from 0 to 1 million users. Netflix, I'm sure we've all used. It took 3.5 years for them to get to 1 million users. Slightly different scenario in the fact that you had to pay and get things over through mail versus what's on the internet now. There used to be, I found one, I should have put it up here, where it has TikTok. TikTok was relatively close to the Spotify to Instagram range, but ChatGPT, it took 5 days. 5 days to get to 1 million users. I don't know where they're at now, but it took 5 days. 5 days for an AI tool to get to 1 million users, because that's how useful this tool is. As we talk about this then, how useful truly is it? Well, it can make you almost twice as good at your job, depending upon relatives in there. But this is a study that was done that I believe OpenAI did this or was a part of this, but they used Copilot, which is part of GitHub, and they asked engineers to build a web server in JavaScript. 45 people used Copilot, 50 people did not. Of that 45, 78% of them completed it. So those who are using Copilot completed the task, 78%. They did it in an hour and 11 minutes on average. Of the 50 people who did not use Copilot, only 70% of them finished. So we had 8% more of the people finished who were using ChatGPT, Copilot, and it took them 2 hours and 41 minutes. So almost twice as long, a little over twice as long, to be able to complete the exact same task. So it is not possible for anyone in this room to think that ChatGPT or tools like this cannot help you in your job to get things done quicker or better. As we talk about this, and the reason I bring up some of the stuff in the beginning, this was taken from an interview on the podcast with Reid Hoffman and Sam Altman. And Sam Altman was talking about why ChatGPT and AI is different and the things that are happening. There is a huge cost to the premium of work that's split across 2 or more people. In any company that I have ever worked in, communication is the #1 issue. I have worked in companies the size of 3 to companies the size of 100,000 plus. Communication is the #1 issue in every single place that I've worked with, because people aren't good at taking what's in here and sharing that with other people they work with, regardless of the size. And so if you take that, I agree with what he said here. There's miscommunication, there's overhead, there's miscommunication everywhere. But if you make one person twice as productive, It's not taking one person and turning them into two. It's taking one person and turning them into 3 or 4 people, because the issues that lie with the communication and other things that are going to happen in the workplace start to go away. So the better you get at using these AI tools, the more efficient you can be, the more your productivity increases. Oop, already talked about that one. So here is an actual research that was done already with, I don't remember if this was Goldman Sachs, it was Fortune 500 company, but essentially they found call center employees that can make them 40% more productive. So if we think about this, 40% more productive, let's say that, as an example, and I'm going to use some numbers out of the air here that may not be correct, but let's say within this, call center times of people calling in, wait time average was 20 to 30 minutes. You make people more productive and you drive the call center wait time down to 3 to 5 minutes. What happens when that happens? Got a lot of people sitting around doing nothing. What do you think the company's going to do with those people? They're going to retrain low-skilled employees to go do something else? No, they're going to get rid of them. When it comes to this, thinking of ChatGPT, here's just a quick list of tests that ChatGPT has passed. So it's not just that it can help you with engineering and help you with other things. I think I've got an example later on about how ChatGPT was used in various medical examinations or conversations with patients. A lot of times when I talk about this, I posted this on LinkedIn 2 or 3 years ago, everyone's like, hey, it's going to be just an industrial revolution, and it absolutely is not. It absolutely is not the same thing. There is no comparison that can be made between the previous industrial revolution and what was going to happen going into the future. The rate of change, I made this number up, is 1,000,000% different. It is absolutely different than what we have saw before. The breadth of impact is now everything versus before where it was relatively just manufacturing. We start to look at self-learning capabilities. The machines back in the day did not have that. ChatGPT is continuing to get better. So I should have put on those tests before, I should have put the before and after, because they ran ChatGPT 3.5 through the exact same tests. Sometimes 3.5 did not pass. 4 came through and smoked a lot of those tests. When it comes to this too, I think I mentioned before, there's estimation we'll have 40% job loss by roughly 2030. One tool can replace cancer diagnosticians across the globe. Not talking about one machine that displaces 15 workers locally. There's a vast difference in those two narratives of what's going to happen within AI, and I don't believe that this is very unlikely to create many new jobs. So what does the future of work look like? Well, AI is a force multiplier. So this is one of my favorite gifts. I use it for everything. Just think about 2 strong people, connect them with a strong embrace to continue to go do strong people things. I think we're going to shoot the Predator after this. But let's go through some examples. So some of these examples are ones that I've used, some of the examples I've seen in the wild. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you can Google ChatGPT examples. They're all over LinkedIn now. That's most of what my feed is, probably tuned to me because that's the stuff I click on and read. So writing code. Like I mentioned, early in my career I was an engineer. I still write code as a hobby. I have recently gotten back into that to be able to write code to help me automate different things. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, I want you to write a Python script that's going to get transactions from the last day of 2 months ago to the first day of the month. I want those transactions to be written to a CSV. I think there's a little bit more to this because I've already done some code, but essentially it was going out to Stripe, pulling the transactions in and then exporting those to a CSV. Something that I was going through and doing manually for about the last year. It took me about 20 minutes to automate the process that I needed so that I no longer have to go out to Stripe, spend roughly 10 to 15 minutes pulling that transaction and getting the things that I want. I now have a cron job set up on my computer that will run this script, and the CSV just opens up after that is done. So I don't have to do anything. Every Wednesday of the month, it'll pop up on my screen now. So if it doesn't, I have a calendar reminder that says, hey, something happened, but it took me 20 to 30 minutes to write this. I have never written Python code in my life. Not once have I written Python code. I've written Perl, had COBOL in college, but I have not once written a line of Python in my life. The reason I call AI as a force multiplier is because I know what's happening in this code, and I know the prompt to get it to write the code for me, and then I can make tweaks and stuff if I want to, but generally I just go back to AI and say, hey, this time delta that you created is not what's needed. And it's like, oh yeah, my bad. How many people are engineers here? How many people have been using ChatGPT for your work? How much better is it than Stack Overflow? A lot, 100% better. There's a bunch of a-holes on Stack Overflow. Why don't you know this? Haven't you figured this out yet? No, I haven't. That's why I'm asking the question. ChatGPT doesn't treat me like that. It helps me do what I want to do. As I mentioned before, I'm writing a second book. One of the chapters in the book is about strategy and execution. So I wanted to, in the book, put some examples of bad strategy. So for those of you that don't deal a lot with strategy, strategy is essentially steps to solve problems for your market. Very simply that. If you're not solving problems, then your strategy isn't really a strategy. A lot of places that I have worked at will have strategy like you see in the left, I guess, most of you, piece where it's like, we're going to see a 20% increase in company size, or we're going to deliver our project in an agile way. So I wrote some ones that I didn't really like. And I said, hey, ChatGPT, based on this information, can you come up with some other examples of bad strategy? And it did. So this helped me in putting together better bullet points for my book, so I didn't have to use the creative energy or energy that I needed to put into other places in the book to come up with some bullet points to express a point. It's also done product management. So again, part of this book, but things that I have done in my career is create problem statements. I had my students in design thinking, intro to design thinking, create problem statements. So I had a snippet that describes what a problem statement is. I pasted that into ChatGPT. I had already been talking to it about State Farm, so we're using State Farm as our strategy. And I said, hey, as a person of State Farm, can you create some problem statements for me? And it created 4 different problem statements. Very similar to problem statements that I would have created myself if I would have done this from scratch. Then gets into, hey, I want to do some lean experimentation. So after I come up with a hypothesis, I need to run some experiments to prove out that hypothesis. So hey, let's do some lean experimentation. Or sorry, can you write a hypothesis for the lean experimentation? It did that too. I said, cool, hey, now that we got this hypothesis and we have some lean experiments, can you write some KPIs for me? Took care of that. Very similar to the ones that I would have picked, but I didn't have to take the time doing it. Took me 2 minutes to write the prompts and about 30 seconds to get an answer, all very closely to the things that I would have done myself. There's tons of other examples out there. Prompts are the way to go to ChatGPT. You don't have to know necessarily the underlying components of what you're trying to get. So as I mentioned, I understand code. So as I said, ChatGPT is a force multiplier. If you are a 1 as an engineer out of 10, it's not going to help you get to a 10 very quickly. You're still going to have to learn things. But you, if are a 5 out of 10 engineer, it's very going to quickly help you get to a 10. And so prompts are the way to go for that. So there's a lot of prompts out there that exist, not just for product management or engineering, but anything that you do. Most of the stuff that I've been talking about for these AI tools have been around chat. There's tools for someone called this mom, pretending to have the daughter on the phone saying that they kidnapped her, trying to get $1 million out of her because they knew her kid, or just guessed her kid was out of the house. Her kid was actually with friends skiing at the time on spring break. And so they called up her house, and the mom thought that the daughter was on the phone. I don't remember or know where they got the information, but through a few YouTube videos or TikTok videos or Instagram videos, you can automate people's voices now. It's not that hard, sadly. Then we've got the use of fear-mongering. We saw that RNC released this commercial, I think this week. They stitched together some pictures of what the world would look like if liberals stayed in power, or Democrats stayed in power, and they had some flyovers of the escalation of terrorism, fighting in Taiwan. They basically just made images up and threw it in this video. There's lots of things you can do, very similar to going through the prompts that we talked about here. Throw those same prompts into different AI tools, you can create images. Then there's AutoGPT. How many people in here have heard of AutoGPT? How many people like ChatGPT? You're gonna like AutoGPT 100 times more. So what AutoGPT is doing, and I was able to get this set up, it was kind of a pain in the ass in the beginning, but I figured out what I was, again, I'm somewhat of an engineer, but not great at it. It essentially is a task creation agent. So AutoGPT pops up at the terminal and says, what would you like to do? I want to do X, Y, and Z. What is your goal? What is your second goal? What is your second goal? What is your second goal? Then it's going to go through and run, and it's going to self-prompt itself. It's going to say, hey, based on the goals that you have, here's the first thing that I think we should do. So let's say that we want to write some code. So you can use AutoGPT to write some code. You can say, hey, one of the examples I saw was someone creating, I think they said a social network, and they wanted to create a login screen for the social network. They said, hey, AutoGPT, I want to create a login screen. Can you do that for me? It did it. Wrote all the code. So it's not just helping you to write code or scripts, it can build the entire application now. It's not great at it. It's struggled to do some of the simple tasks that I've had, but I think that's due to my understanding of not knowing some of the tools I need to have installed on my computer. But I think if I were to ask the right questions to ChatGPT, it could help me with that. You can also do market research with it. So this is a really cool one. Dude said he pretended to be, was it a shoe company? Yeah, shoe company. And then said, hey, ChatGPT, here are my goals. It went out to the internet, read tons of websites, read tons of reviews, came back and summarized what those top waterproof shoes were. This other person used it to say, hey, I want to write, or I want to do a podcast. Can you go out to the internet and tell me what topics I should talk about that are relevant right now? So it can go out to different news aggregators or CNN, any of those, pull in some different topics, and then they can say, okay, here's what we're going to talk about on our podcast. That is automating someone's entire job. So if you are someone who creates a podcast and you have someone on your staff that helps you come up with topics, come up with ideas, do the research around what you're going to talk about, AutoGPT just did it. That person doesn't need to work anymore. They can do other things, but you probably don't need that person. There are things that AI can't do well yet. One of the things that I think is going to change, or as far as opportunities that are going to grow, is going to be in psychology in certain areas of the medical field. Certain areas of the medical field which require hands-on and or personal touch or interaction. But with that, there was recently some research in a study that came out that talked about ChatGPT's or chatbots' responses to customer inquiries. Most of the people rated the chatbot's responses that were coming from ChatGPT as higher quality and more empathetic. So I talk about the opportunity for psychology and these other things, but we have large language models that are also stepping into that arena to understand what it is that people are doing and being able to help them in ways that we as humans are potentially even struggling with, because maybe we can't get the right number of people at the hospital. I think, is it Idaho? Due to changes in laws, it was Idaho, somewhere out that way. Due to changes in laws, they're struggling to keep doctors around because doctors don't want to work in that state, so they're fleeing. This is the next best option. So how do we prepare for the future of work? How do I think we can fix this? As I've just crushed all of your afternoons with doom and gloom and sadness, but I like talking about this topic, but I don't like talking about this topic because I think there's a lot that we can do. It's not going to change some of the outcomes that I've talked about. Those things are very likely still going to happen. But when it comes to how you are going to interact with the work that you do or the businesses you work with, I think there are skills that you can start to develop now. They're going to be more well-rounded than you doing something specifically. So we need to develop this new generation of corporate leaders and employees. And when I look at this, college is preparing you to do a technical skill very well. Whether that's engineering, marketing, being a doctor, college is here to teach you that technical skill. And it's doing a fantastic job of it. Especially the students in my class, they're all rockstar design thinkers because they have a great instructor. So when it comes to this, how does the world play out when AI can do 50+% of the work that you're doing? So what do you do? What do you pivot to start doing a little bit more of? And as we talk about that, it's not something that you can fight. You need to enhance the work that you are doing with AI, because if you are not doing that or don't start doing that in the very near future, you are going to start to become behind other people across the world. You have to start using AI to automate the tasks and help you do things quicker than what you were able to do before. So if you want to create a marketing plan, ChatGPT can help you with that. Is it going to be the best output of the marketing plan that you could potentially create? No. But if ChatGPT can create a marketing plan in 5 minutes that you then augment and make changes to over the next hour versus you spending 2 to 3 days writing a marketing plan on your own, which way should you go or which way would you go? So as we look at this, there's new different skills that need to be picked up and need to be taught in school. I've seen ads lately on Instagram and Facebook from some schools that are doing a little bit of this. They are starting to bring design into the curriculum or giving master's degrees or bachelor's degrees that encompass more things around design, more things around what I would call product management. And probably because I'm a product manager by trade, I'm slightly biased, But when you look at the world being able to change and you look at being able to prompt these AI tools to do things for you, then there are skills that need to change versus you needing to sit down and be an engineer, an AI engineer all of the time. So we'll talk about those. And as I mentioned before, each human is unique. None of you have had the same life experiences as anyone else on the planet. Even if you've got twins, you guys were not together 100% of the time that you were alive. You did not experience the exact same emotions. You did not see situations in the exact same way. You are very unique. So if you take that opportunity, you then get a chance to solve problems in ways that no one else will. But it's really hard to solve those problems unless you understand how to go about understanding problems that people have and then ideating through those solutions to be able to put a option out in the world to help improve people's lives. And the reason this matters is humans are irrational, emotional beings. And I'm going to talk about the 5 skills here in a second. Humans are irrational, emotional beings. 95% of the decisions that we make are based on emotions. We would like to think that we make decisions based on logic. We absolutely do not. A very simple explanation of this could be clothing or cars. If we were all getting a car to get from point A to point B, we may have different types of vehicles, such as I need a truck to pull something, or I need a truck to fit in because cars are too small, or I need something to get from my house to work. If that was the case, we would all see very similar cars out there. But we don't. There's different brands, there's different colors, there's different features. We don't pick those features and things because we logically need them. We pick those features because we identify with the brand, we identify with the color, we identify with whatever marketing message that company has put in, and we are making those decisions based on logic. It is a need that we have to get from point A to point B. Same thing can be said about clothes. Clothes are here to protect you from the elements. If you're cold, you put on a jacket. If it's hot outside, you put on shorts and a t-shirt. If that was the case, we would all relatively be wearing the same thing. But that's not the case. I'm wearing all black because I like black. Has nothing to do with protecting me from the elements. So as we talk about this then, there are 5 skills that I believe that everyone needs to start picking up. As I mentioned before, college is great at teaching you those technical skills. These skills are the next transformation of where I see most employees going, are the ones that want to stay employed longer than others. First one is mindset. Mindset being the belief in yourself that you can accomplish the things that you want to do. A majority of people struggle with, I always blank on the name of this. It's that thing where you don't think you can do what you can do. Imposter syndrome, yes. Did you guys know that that's not a real thing? That's not a diagnosed thing. It's not like depression. You can't diagnose someone with imposter syndrome. It's just confidence. Most people are like, oh, I have imposter syndrome and I'm not going to be able to do these things. It's just confidence. Maybe that's why I forget the name of it all the time. But coming into mindset, it's you believing that you can do the things that you want to do. If you do not believe that you can do the things, let's say you've got a startup and you need to raise money. If you do not believe that you can accomplish the goals that you have, do you think someone's going to give you money for it? No. If you want to be a director or a senior director, or if you want to get a job as a college student and you don't think that you can be that marketing specialist or that software engineer at the company, do you think someone's going to give you a job for it? No. You've got to believe you can do the things that you want. Second one here is being a leader. As we talked about before, being a leader has nothing to do with your job title. It has everything to do with how you interact with other people, how you take empathy, how you connect with other people, how you take ownership, your level of charisma, your ability to have a conversation with people. All of those things are what is going to attract followers for you. When you try to do something by yourself, at least in the past, ChatGPT has helped with this. When you try to do something by yourself, your ability or your output is relatively finite because you are one person. If you build followers, look at the things that you can do. There's many examples of changes that we have seen in the world from one person inspiring other people to do great things. That is what being a leader is. If you want to make the changes in the workforce, to make the changes to help avoid, for at least your bubble, for your community, some of the things that are going to happen when AI starts to take over, you need to be a leader to be able to do that. The third one then is non-sales selling. This is interviews, getting people to buy into your ideas, getting people to buy into your projects, things along those lines. It's not about going out and selling a product. It's relatively the same thing, but if you can't sell ideas to other people and get them to buy into you in some way, shape, or form, then the things that you want to do as a leader, you're going to struggle. Then it's strategy and execution. I was reading a study that PwC did the other day. It was back in 2013, a survey across a multitude of Fortune, I don't know if they went 100 or 500. But of the survey, they noted that 8%. 8% of the people noted that people in their corporation were good at strategy and execution. That means 91% of the people in the world suck at the number one thing that every company needs to do well to stay in existence: strategy and execution. You need to come up with ideas that are going to go out into the market that people are willing to pay money for, and you got to be able to build them. The last one then is building and leading teams. Within this, the world is going to get different because building and leading teams is going to be different. I didn't think about that until just right now. But as part of it, some of the things that you are going to do is be building and leading teams of people who can use this AI, AutoGPT, ChatGPT, whatever tools that you need to do the work better and more efficiently. And you have to be able to manage them and have to be able to help them continue to grow. The days of having a job and keeping that job for 30 years, like both of my parents have had relatively the same job for the last 30 years, are done. Like, those days are gone. If you do not continue to read and continue to grow and continue to self-educate, life is going to be very short for you in the career world. But in 7 years anyhow, 40% of us could lose our job anyway, so what does it matter, right? But again, to finish this off, I put a lot of stuff out here as doom and gloom. My goal here is to spread some awareness of how I see the world. There are other people who are going to get up here and talk about the same world in completely different ways. It's going to be the same people who says, oh, we've gone through this before, the Industrial Revolution happens. We can come up with better ideas or better ways to work. It's not going to disrupt society. It has already started. It has already started and is not going to stop. A sad fact of life is corporations exist to make money. Capitalism is one of the best economies and ways that you can produce goods and being able to sustain everything around it, because we all need money to eat and do those things. Hopefully the world changes. Hopefully universal basic income starts to exist. Otherwise, we're going to have a very depressed society where violence increases and things happen. So the reason I want to spread this message is just in case any of the stuff that we have talked about today happens to be true, I want to make sure that we have seen the possibilities so that we can start to think about what can be different. Because this is not going to stop. Everything that we have talked about today is not going to stop. Governments are going to put regulations in place, and it is not going to stop the work that is going to happen. Because the first government that puts the regulation in place is the first government that sacrifices their economy to other countries who are not going to do this. So that's all I have to talk about today. Any questions?
So, I'm in general agreement with what you're saying. Do you think like the displacement of jobs? We've seen some articles out there that saying it actually will maybe happen more to the creative white collar type of worker than the traditional blue collar worker. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I think we've seen displacement of some of the blue collar stuff in the past through just think about how automobiles or stuff are made today. I think it's coming after a new industry that we didn't have issues with before. So very, very much agree. It's relatively something we've seen in the past for a completely new subset of people.
And then I agree with your points there, but I also think like if for those that are stagnant and do keep their jobs, how much do you think their job actually turns into just supervision versus what they traditionally have always done?
It's going to be, it's a great point. So his question was, how much of the job then turns into supervision? So you're going to need someone to supervise the machines. And so going back to kind of Sam Altman's quote on if we can automate 2 or 3 people's jobs and have one person do them, that's relatively what it'll be. It'll be one person doing the job they've done, but it's going to be more managing and prompting the machines to get the stuff out of them to build the things that they need.
Thank you, Brian.
talk, I'm a biotech person. Your purpose is way bigger than your profit. I'm talking about you. I was so inspired. You are a big time thinker. And you are irrational and emotional in a very unique way. Very unique way. And that's what I see as leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Would you say that prompt writing will become a universal or will have to become a universal skill, or would it be like a new career?
I think it could be. I think it needs to be both. There are some companies I've seen. I haven't went and found the job post. I've seen articles where they talk about prompt writers making like $300K right now, which is a shitload of money. But thinking about that perspective as a prompt writer, you're having a machine build things and do the work of 10 people as one person. So $300K to do the work of 10 people is relatively cheap for a company. But at the same time, I think for me to continue to grow in my career, I will have to get better at prompts to do some of the things that I need to do in a much quicker way. So for example, if I needed to write a marketing plan, ChatGPT is going to be the start, but it's not going to be the end, if that makes sense. So I think most people need to get prompt writing as a part of what they do on a daily basis to speed up the output of what they're trying to create.
Thank you.
And it's great at doing not just, like I said, technical stuff of writing code. Code I think is easier because it's a little bit more ones and zeros as far as the logic goes, versus language is much tougher. But ChatGPT has done an amazing job, especially ChatGPT 4 has done an amazing job of outputting really complex thoughts based on prompts that I've given it. And it will continue to kind of learn from the stuff you're doing.
One of the models that I've kind of seen is you're talking about a lot of public stuff right now, but then larger organizations implementing artificial intelligence within their organization, so they develop organizational knowledge that doesn't violate attorney-client privilege or other contractual obligations. And in the healthcare setting, of course, we have HIPAA, and in the middle healthcare setting, even more stringent type stuff. So,
Yeah.
I think part of the monetization and the things that are going to happen is right now we have this technology that's kind of all the people, right? And as that gets implemented so that it's more confidential and integrated into these companies, the folks that are going to be able to help those companies, integrate confidential artificial intelligence within those organizations in a way I think is going to be a skill set that's going to be useful to them. So I don't know, that's kind of a perspective that I see.
Absolutely. And when big data was a buzzword many years ago, there was a talk of big data and startups coming in to disrupt big data. Startups cannot disrupt big data because they don't have big data. They can build tools to help collate the data and help make sense of it, similar to that situation. But companies that are relatively large, I think, are going to be able to harness this technology quicker than some of the smaller ones because they have mass amounts of data they can use for chatbots or other things that they need within their corporation, again, to lower the need of various people in the room.
But the CEO of that organization isn't going to be the person to implement that.
Correct,
It's
yeah.
going to need really smart people to help them do that.
Absolutely. And so I think there is going to be teams that are created of engineering, right? But what will happen is that team of engineering to implement these things is ultimately going to lead to the layoffs of a lot of other people as that AI starts to do the other jobs. So you have the managers of the machines, but it ultimately affects other people in ways that don't come back. And a good example of this is a new tool out there called Dante AI. And it's interesting because it's connected to ChatGPT, but you can create your own data set. So I've fed it 700 plus pages of things from my book, different teachings and conversations and emails that I've sent. And it still is very weak in comparison to the answers that I get when I query that tool versus I take the same query and put it into ChatGPT. My hope was that I could teach Dante to write like me, so I could give it some prompts to do some marketing emails or some other things, and they're nowhere near, like it gets the high level topics, but it's not good enough. I can do the same prompt to ChatGPT, and with as much data as it has, it gives me much better answers. And so those companies, yes, they are going to step further ahead in comparison to some of the others because of the large amounts of data.
What is the contribution of AI going to be in law enforcement, justice system, and politics? There is going to be
It's a good question. I haven't put a lot of thought into the law enforcement side. When it comes to the legal side, I think it's going to help with understanding or researching case law. So instead of having one person going researching a bunch of things, you can put some prompts in and be able to get information out. That struggle, though, is the same thing we've seen in the medical field, where you can ask medical questions and you don't know if the answer it gave is right or not. And so we need to create better confidence there. But I could see AI tools helping with a multitude of things. It starts to get a little weird because of the bias in AI. And we've seen different tools that have been used in the core systems of law enforcement where it helped decide which people got certain fates. And there was very clear bias. I forget the studies, but there was very clear bias in those where it sent people who were African American or of a minority to jail sooner versus the same crime as people who are Caucasian. And so there's a lot of things that could happen in that space, but I haven't put as much thought into it because it's a space that I don't understand as well. I don't have kind of expertise or knowledge in that outside of business.
So this is kind of a vague question, but do you think there would be like a saturation point for AI? Because it is really a reflection of like the input it takes in. So if you only have like 5 clinical researchers in the world writing about like a specific topic, and the AI can only get input from those people for the particular research that they're doing, do you think there'll ever be like a saturation of like there's no more input to be had, or do you think like AI at that point will just like do its own clinical research? Or, you know, it's a vague question, it's more of a chicken and egg question, but
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could. I don't see why it wouldn't, and or what would happen is AI starts to help in areas where we have lots of data, and then people will move from that to go do research in other areas that augments. But yeah, good thought.
It occurs to me the veracity of the information becomes very important. So can you today ask it to provide citations as you go through?
Yes, but it sometimes hallucinates, I think is what they call it. And because I've asked it for certain things, I was looking for a very specific quote from a book. It was a book called Who by Jeff Smart around hiring. And I was trying to look for an example of a thing and I couldn't find it in my ebook. And I said, hey, can you help me? I think it's in this book, but it's not. And then it like made up information about that book. And so I've asked it other times for, I said, hey, what are the top 5 TED Talks on design thinking? And it gave me a lot of blank things, and it extrapolated or put together 2 different TED Talks as one, and it gave like part of the title and made up the other part of the title, and then said it was by this person, which that person gave a TED Talk, but it wasn't on that topic, and then it put together like 2 or 3 TED Talk topics in the description. So it's not perfect yet, and so that's why I say like start with it, and then pull from that, and you need to do your own research in some areas, but when it comes to writing the code and stuff, if you can read the code and see that it does the thing you want, then it's relatively good.
Thank you. It was really awesome overview of trends and where we're going. Have you thought about the last point, basically, which, I mean, if leaders need followers, someone needs to be a follower, right? And there's not enough spots for all of us to be leaders. Can that be somehow, basically, can the fact that we might not even foresee some additional services we might need, like industrialization did with like thousands of products, we now have millions of products in decades. Can it be that in a decade or so we will have services that we don't even foresee now, and they will need more people to work on them? If we're automating most of the work now, where are these people who are not going to become leaders? What are they going to do? Right? That is the kind of
So not everyone wants to be a leader in that, right? So we've got that. And so that'll help bring a little bit of balance, but I think the other people who either don't want to be a leader or don't have skill sets to help with some of this just won't have jobs. My hope is that because we will be able to automate so much stuff, and Sam talks about that in that same podcast, that the relative cost of goods will drive very close to zero And so one, the amount of money and things that we have in the world could relatively be self-sustaining. So we have somewhat of a utopia, but we have this universal basic income that allows people to spend more time on their hobbies. So if they want to get into sports or art or painting or any of those things. And some of the studies on universal basic income have shown some of that happening, where people get just cash to live their life with no reason behind it. And we've seen a drive towards people either working more or keeping the same number of hours, but having the opportunity to go out and do hobbies and stuff that they did in the past. So the hope is that there's a balance, but I think there's a hurdle that we have to get to before we get to that space. You could also look at, could we take one job that's done by one person for 40 hours and break it into two 20-hour chunks or three 15-hour chunks and have someone work for 15, 15, 15, and you got the rest of the time off. I don't know if that was kind of the basis of your question, but that one's tough. There could be things that get created, but honestly, I think if they were to get created, just going back to like the auto GPT example, it's going to prompt its way into finding a way to not have to put a person in place to do it. Any other questions? I think we're over time, but I don't know if people got this space.
All right. Well, how about we give Brandon a round of applause?